Ciao, everyone, and welcome back to Bites of Italy, the podcast where we explore Italy's culinary scene, one city at a time. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Scotty. If you watched our last episode, you know we're in Turin. Last time we shared some of our absolute favorite restaurants in the city.
But today we're switching gears a bit, because Turin isn't just about long, hearty meals. It's also at the forefront of a completely new aperitivo trend, one that's gaining momentum.
Now, anyone who has ever sat down to a typical Italian aperitif probably associates it with large wooden boards, piles of cured meats, pieces of cheese, maybe some olives or nuts thrown in a bowl. But here, the pre-dinner hour is being completely redefined by a trend that kind of nods to Spanish tapas. But it's quintessential Turin.
We mean Piattini, which can be translated as creative small plates that let you build your own experience. When we were exploring the city, this concept felt like a total revelation. Small tastings to share, and wine in a convivial atmosphere. A format that has become a true gastronomic cult in the city.
So, this episode is perfect for you if you've ever looked at a menu and thought, I want everything. Or if you're not that hungry, trying to keep things light.
Or you just hate committing to one single dish. With Piattini, you don't have to choose. You just explore.
No impossible choices, no over-ordering regret, no sitting there eyeing someone else's dish wishing you picked differently. Piattini solve all of that. Smaller portions mean total freedom. You can mix, match, explore, and basically build your own tasting experience. It's like turning the entire menu into your playground.
Let's unpack this. Because as always, we have a handful of stories for you, a few surprises along the way, and some really good recommendations.
I think the perfect place to begin is right in the heart of the city, in one of its oldest, most vibrant districts, the Roman Quadrilatero.
Picture this. You're walking through the city center and just about a 15-minute stroll from the famous Egyptian Museum. You turn the corner and stumble upon a cozy, eclectic little cafe and wine bar called Piattini Caffe e Vini. They are literally planting their flag in the trend right there in the name.
It is run by Costanzo and Chiara, who merged their two massive passions, which are specialty coffee and artisanal natural wines.
And the space itself reflects that duality perfectly, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They open early, serving delicious specialty coffee and porridge, followed by brunch. They seamlessly transform into an energetic, intimate wine bar in the evenings.
The atmosphere is incredibly curated, informal, and very stylish. The walls are decorated with all these unique, mismatched small plates and beautiful drawings by French Carlo Magno, a talented artist from Turin. This creates an intimate atmosphere that feels more like an eccentric collector's living room than a formal dining room.
Exactly. But the driving force behind this place is culinary math. Menu is built on plates that cost €10 or less, and it changes entirely depending on the season. Let's take a look at what they serve in the fall.
It was all about rich, warming dishes, things like Piedmontese cheese fondue served with crispy croutons, or caponette, the traditional Piedmontese cabbage rolls, but totally elevated. We also tried these amazing crostini with roasted pumpkin, blue cheese, and local roasted hazelnuts, and lots of seasonal vegetables, roasted and sweet and sour. Everything was so good.
When summer hits, the temperature rises, the menu instantly pivots.
Yeah, completely. In the summer, it's all about bright flavors. Those small plates become Sicilian-inspired caponata, a refreshing panzanella salad, vibrant gazpacho, and brilliantly earthy beetroot hummus. So fresh. And of course, vitello tonnato, a typical Piedmontese dish that we talked about in the previous episode.
And it demands an equally thoughtful beverage to wash it down. Which brings us to Chiara. She is a phenomenal sommelier, and her philosophy centers almost entirely on natural wine labels. She seeks out small, independent producers who utilize native, highly resilient grape varieties. You can get a glass for just €6, and the offerings rotate so fast they just write them on a blackboard.
Right, but let's be honest. What completely anchored our experience there was their house vermouth, which we had with a vegan chocolate brownie and walnut cake. And by the way, delicious desserts.
Let's talk for a moment about vermouth, which was born in Turin in the second half of the 18th century. I feel compelled to challenge the American perception of this fortified wine.
Go for it.
For most of us, vermouth is just that dusty bottle you keep in the back of the liquor cabinet. The one you use to make a Manhattan cocktail, right?
Yeah, it's usually oxidized and totally forgotten.
So true. But Chiara's vermouth is a completely different story. The base is Barbera wine with the addition of intensely ripe cherries and Ramazine, small, incredibly aromatic Piedmont plums. And the choice of Barbera is highly intentional.
Why is that?
Well, Barbera is a grape known for its bright, natural acidity. So instead of a thick, syrupy vermouth, you get a ruby red drink with a surprisingly fresh, pleasantly bitter finish that cleanses the palate and paves the way for another small bite.
In short, the attention to detail, from the service to the ambiance, makes Piattini Caffe e Vini a go-to for those seeking a different aperitivo in the city center. But some might say the concept is perfect for grazing. As you wander around, hitting museum after museum, there are days when you simply don't feel like snacking. You want a hearty, rustic, deeply comforting bowl of pasta.
Which brings us to our second stop. Imagine moving away from the city center to San Silverio, one of Turin's most eclectic and culturally rich neighborhoods, which we talked about in the previous episode. Just a 10-minute walk from the Porta Nuova Central Station in a slightly quieter part of the district, you'll find Barbagusto.
And walking into Barbagusto feels like getting a warm hug from the city.
It really does. It is a contemporary piola, which is the local term for a Piedmontese osteria. It has this wonderfully youthful, slightly chaotic, homey vibe. Mismatched tables with marble or wooden tops, a classic bar counter, a display case packed with fresh antipasto, bottles of wine everywhere, and blackboards listing the daily dishes and wines, a small garden just off the street with a few tables.
And the duo who run it truly makes the experience. There's Fabio, the young, cheerful bartender and waiter who will happily stand there and translate all the blackboard intricacies for you. And Ernest, the chef who occasionally pops out of his kitchen cubbyhole, looking brilliantly dazed by the dinner rush.
The food remains strictly Piedmontese with a few clever digressions. The menu changes daily, which is a testament to their reliance on what is fresh and available in the local markets. But Barbagusto's absolute highlight, the real breakthrough on the menu, is their ingenious half-portion policy.
They actively encourage you to order half portions from the first and second course menu.
I have to admit, when I first heard about this, my cynical mind immediately thought, okay, they're just shrinking the portion and doubling the price to capitalize on the modern trend. But at Barbagusto, they offer half the portion for exactly half the price.
Yeah, they keep the price point highly accessible, around 6-8 euros for a half portion, but the technique and the ingredient sourcing are uncompromising. And you get a spectacularly varied experience.
Once seated, we started by sharing their antipasto mix. For 18 euros, you get a perfectly balanced vitello tonnato, Russian salad, local tomini cheese, crostini layered with rich butter and anchovies and peppers in bagna cauda.
For those unfamiliar, bagna cauda is an intense hot dip made with garlic, anchovies, and olive oil. It's truly powerful stuff.
Let's not forget the local bra veal sausage, which, interestingly, is traditionally eaten completely raw. It was soft, spreadable, beautifully seasoned, and incredibly fresh. And also the raw, top-quality Piedmontese fassone beef. The meat is so tender and aromatic that it requires virtually no seasoning, just a touch of olive oil and salt. Simply delicious.
And once you've navigated that antipasto, you can use the half-portion hack to order all 3 primi piatti. We tried the asparagus ravioli with basil and walnut pesto, which were very tasty. But the absolute hit is the iconic agnolotti, those charming little pasta pockets, here stuffed with bra sausage and topped with Barbera wine sauce. So, it's basically mulled wine pasta.
Then we had the incredibly thin ribbon of Turin pasta, which we also talked about in the previous episode.
If you haven't seen it, check it out to find out why Turin is so intensely yellow.
At Barbagusto, it is served simply with high-quality butter, anchovies, and a bit of lemon zest to cut through its richness.
We washed it all down with half a liter of excellent Nebbiolo house wine, and after that we were satisfied enough to skip the main courses and move on to dessert.
Yeah, they serve homemade Gianduia. Most people know Gianduia just as a delicious chocolate hazelnut spread, right? Like the ancestor of things like Nutella. But this isn't just a dessert. It is a piece of 19th century history on a plate.
Okay, so break this down for us.
Well, during the Napoleonic Wars in the early 1800s, the British Royal Navy instituted a massive blockade against French-controlled ports, including those serving the Piedmont region. This effectively cut off the import of cocoa beans from South America.
Which meant cocoa became an impossibly rare, exorbitantly expensive luxury.
Right, but Piedmont had a secret weapon. They had an absolute abundance of incredibly high-quality, oil-rich hazelnuts growing right in their backyard. So, local chocolatiers realized they could stretch their severely limited precious supply of cocoa by blending it with a finely ground paste made from locally roasted hazelnuts.
Wait, so we literally have Napoleonic Wars to thank for the ancestor of modern chocolate hazelnut spreads?
We really do.
That is wild. I mean, you're eating a €5 dessert, and you're essentially tasting a 200-year-old solution to an international trade war.
And that historical depth provides the perfect bridge to our final stop. But before that, if you enjoy discovering places like this and love the stories food can tell us about a place, please do us a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss the next episode.
And share this journey with a friend who loves travel, incredible food, or just a really good story. Trust us, we're just getting started. Now, let's move on to our third and final stop, Café dell'Orologio, which is also in the San Silverio district. It is marked by a historic clock hanging right on the corner of Via Morgari and Via Belfiore.
Hence the name Orologio.
Exactly. This is an old Turin establishment brought back to life by three friends. Elisabetta, who is the chef, alongside Blue and Lorenzo, who manage the floor and the extensive wine program.
And it has a great vibe.
Yeah. They've renovated the space to have this very clean, almost Nordic aesthetic. But the food and the culture happening inside are purely Piedmontese, from lunch to dinner.
They operate not only as a restaurant, but also as a bottiglieria con cucina, which basically means a bottle shop with a kitchen. So you can just walk in, buy a bottle of wine or some local preserves, and leave. But if you arrive in the late afternoon, you get to experience the core of their concept, which is the Merenda Sinoira, right?
Yeah, the Merenda Sinoira is a traditional Piedmontese late afternoon meal. Think of it as a rural 19th century precursor to the modern aperitivo. Long before the concept of urban happy hours emerged, Piedmontese farmers working in the fields needed a bridge between a grueling day of work and a late dinner. Around 5 p.m., they shared small plates of filling calorie-dense dishes, arranged on a communal table.
So, Turin is not just copying Spanish tapas with the small plates trend, but is actually returning to its agricultural roots.
Exactly. And Elisabetta's menu, with dishes that cost between 5 and 10 euros per plate, is a literal time machine to that era, but the technique is incredibly elevated. For example, Piedmontese hot and crunchy potato fritters. She also makes local steak tartare or carne cruda. She even takes snails, fries them in corn flour, and serves with a bright green herb mayonnaise.
The menu really is a masterclass in reviving lost dishes.
It is. She serves boiled veal tongue with an intense spicy red sauce, which is a classic poor man's cut, elevated through careful, slow cooking. She does insalata di gallina bionda using a special local Piedmontese chicken breed.
That sounds pretty intense compared to happy hour nachos. And to top it all off, they also have incredibly rare dishes, right?
Yeah, like bonnet, a typical Piedmont dessert that we talked about in the previous episode, here in the white version.
And what absolutely blew my mind was the bold wine strategy that Blue and Lorenzo have implemented. I mean, they call themselves a wine shop, and there are bottles of wine everywhere with prices on them. They're 100% Piedmontese, but when you think of Piedmont wine, you immediately think of Barolo and Barbaresco, the two giants of Nebbiolo, or about more down-to-earth, yet still popular grapes like Barbera or Dolcetto.
Of course.
But they also stock their shelves with very local, incredibly obscure grapes. And I have to admit, reading the labels was like reading a list of characters from The Lord of the Rings. I'm talking about grapes named Zlarina, Croatina, Baratusia, and Avana.
The elven wines.
Exactly. What's more, there are over 30 open bottles of wine available to order by the glass, and the selection is rich and varied.
And the beauty of Café dell'Orologio is that you don't need to be an expert to drink them. You just tell Blue or Lorenzo what you normally drink back home, and they will amiably challenge your palate. And before you know it, you are an hour deep into a conversation about forgotten wines. The historic clock outside is ticking away, and you realize that one glass was absolutely not enough.
It is the perfect synthesis of how this city operates.
It really is. So, dear listener, when you look at the culinary map we've outlined, you'll find a manual for navigating Turin today. Just think of the arsenal of knowledge you now have. Do not let the algorithm block your curiosity. You can ignore the typical tourist spots with their pricey, boring cheese boards and immerse yourself into the real mechanics of the city.
You can take a stroll to Rome's Quadrilatero district and experience the cutting-edge, seasonal Piattini and natural wine at Piattini Caffe e Vini.
You can head to the San Salvario district and use the brilliant half-portion hack at Barbagusto.
And you can anchor your evening at Café dell'Orologio, tearing into rustic Merenda Sinoira dishes and sipping very local wines.
And that brings us to the end of today's culinary journey through the Turin Piattini scene. A whole new way to eat, explore, and honestly enjoy more of the menu.
If this episode made you hungry, or just a little less afraid of ordering everything, make sure you're following Bites of Italy so you don't miss what's coming next. Because we're not leaving Turin just yet. In the next episode, we'll take a closer look at one of the city's most underrated delicacies, pizza al padellino.
That's the small, round, pan-baked pizza with a crispy base, fluffy interior, and toppings that go way beyond your typical slice.
It's unique, it's local, and trust us, you probably haven't had pizza like this before.
Grazie mille for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of Bites of Italy.
Ciao!